And now, to start off the day, let me introduce to you our first panel, titled Investing in Media Technology, which will discuss the latest trends of investment in media and digital startups. Please welcome to the stage the moderator, Igor Ovcharenko, the Regional Manager for Central Eastern Europe and MENA of Seedstars.
All right, can you hear me? All right. Hey guys, thank you ArabNet team for having us today. Super excited to be for the first time at this conference. Very excited about the Starcom and the initiative about the track. As the moderator today announced, I am a manager for C and MENA at Seedstars. Seedstars is a company builder based in Geneva. We invest in startups. We organize the biggest startup competition in emerging markets. And can you hear me? That's better? Okay, sorry. Yeah, and we are truly global. We invest also in media startups, advertising startups, etc. And I think today we can see a trend that all these huge media corporations and media agencies, they look more into the startups, seeing the small and medium businesses. And we can see that they invest more, they make some acquisitions. And yeah, that's going to be the topic of today's discussion. Feel free to ask your questions through the poll. I'm going to follow it and we'll jump into the discussion. And afterwards, after the discussion, we're going to have a Q&A session, so be ready. And let me invite to the stage my colleagues in crime, Nehme, Managing Director of Digital at Starcom MediaVest Group, and Frédéric from NUMA. All right, guys, let's start with the introduction. Like how do you work with startups? What's your, background? What's your experience? Let's tell more about what you do.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Ali, and I head digital for the group. With startups, we have two programs. I was presenting it 2 weeks ago. I think it's becoming something that is apparent in the market. The first program is more on a global level, called Publicis 90. Publicis 90 is a group-level initiative that started, I think, 4 months ago. That was to celebrate 90 years for the company globally. The company was a global competition where you submit your startups. We ended up globally with 3,600 entries, out of which 140 was from MENA. 2 weeks ago, we announced the local shortlist, and out of these 3,600, we ended up with 12 coming from UAE. We had no entries from outside of UAE, so all of them came from UAE. And a lot of these startups are very common ones, like the grocer, Carpool Arabia, Use Medicus, and other startups in the East. Now that's on a more global level, which is against equity. So the whole purpose of this is investing in them, but not only in just money and taking back equity, it's also how can we work with them to bring them all the partners that Publicis globally has, especially access to market and access to mentorship. On the local level, we have a program called Next Tech Now. It's a program where we invite all the startups to work with us to help them connect with our clients. So we represent big global multinational and local clients like P&G, Samsung, and a lot of these global clients. And those clients are looking for innovation. They're looking for partners, smaller partners who can help them innovate. Especially that most of the challenges that these marketeers have can today be easily fixed or dealt with by working with these partners. So we have that program. Anybody can access the website. It's nexttechnow.me. You go and you submit your startup. We'll be in touch. Every time a planner has a campaign, every time a planner leads a client, they will make sure they connect that startup with the client, and we have a full program with the process where they can come to us and we'll work with them to be part of it. Obviously, if you're a small startup, you're getting access to these big clients, so you're getting enough data, but you also access to their money and their big spends. And $50,000 from a big client is nothing, but for a small startup, that's a lot for them. So, and typically, those never ask for equity, so you're somehow taking a free ride where everybody wins. You're fixing a challenge, and the startups are happy.
Perfect. Frédéric?
Yeah. Hello. NUMA is an organization that supports entrepreneurship and innovation through various activities. In fact, we operate co-working events about new technology, new trends. We accelerate startups since 5 years in France and now in Moscow, in Bangalore, in Mexico, and very soon in Barcelona. We also do operate some open innovation programs with corporates. And actually, as a whole, the concept of NUMA is really having all those guys working together. I mean, communities for us are the trend makers, the ones that are not really starting companies, but may start to try some technologies, new trends, new markets. The startups take these trends and transform it as a product, and we try to accelerate them to get quickly to a product and that has market fit and that is with a business model that is proven. And then we think that we need to make them work with the corporates, which are the industry leaders that really can scale this to a global level very quickly. And so we would like to have this synergetic view of the economy and making them work together. So that's the concept of NUMA that we've been developing for 15 years in France, since we were created in 2000 in Paris. And it's been a long, long road. And since 2 years, we decided to launch this activity, we decided to launch this in the growing ecosystem where we think there is a particular appealing for this model. So basically, as I said, India, Latin America, Russia, things like that.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's dive deep into the main topic, right? Invest into startups. So we can see there is like a huge trend right now. All the big media agencies and media owners, they are more interested in working with startups, in acquiring them, in investing in them, mentoring them. So let's talk about like what Starcom is doing right now, and then maybe we talk about more about the global trends, what's going on in the US, Europe, like in global scale, and go zoom back to MENA region specifically. All right, Ali?
Okay, I'm gonna talk from a Publicis Group perspective, right. Because most of these acquisitions are led by Publicis Group, even though they might sit in a different brand. I think for the past 90 years, most of the entities that you see today within Publicis Media were at some point acquired. If you're a big company and you want to speed up something, it's very hard for you to just wait until you can build it. Sometimes acquiring is easier. And that applies to most of the brands we have today. I think the biggest one was 2 years ago with Sapient. You're talking $3.4 billion acquisition cash. I think that was the biggest single acquisition that the company did ever. Other acquisitions globally were things like Relevant24, which is a content company. We bought MRY, focus on youth, and we bought so many. And in most of these cases, they buy them for the talent, for the expertise, and then they try to scale them across the globe. And they know where to put them by now. I think we're one of the most experienced when it comes to acquisition and understanding where we put them. In MENA, I think the biggest one, and I think I saw Yusuf, he was the CEO of Flip back then. That was one of the biggest, I think, acquisitions that happened in the Middle East as a group level.
All right. Like, tell me more about the failures, okay? Because like I think this is a topic that there's not that much left in Middle East, but yeah, it's like it's very cool that you guys people invest into startups and nobody speaks out loud about the failures, right? I want to also like go into this topic just a bit.
So let me tell you the failed acquisitions before we acquire them. So in MENA, it is. So if there is a need for a local market to acquire, it goes to global, and there's a M&A team that comes in and try to acquire it. We tried in the past 3 years to acquire 2 companies here, and both failed. In some cases, if these startups are too small, or they're focused on one country, or they see that their overhead is too high, we tend to say no. And this comes from a global level. And for example, one of the biggest companies is based in Jordan. That process took a year. At the end, it didn't go through because they didn't have enough access to other markets where we wanted to. Let me tell you about the outside of our group. I think you guys heard LiveRail was shut down 2 days ago.
By Facebook.
That's $500 million acquisition, I think 2 years ago. So if people don't know, LiveRail is the biggest video DSP back then. It's technology to acquire video. Facebook bought it 2 years ago for $500 million, and 2 days ago they decided to shut it down. They decided to shut it down, maybe $500 million out of 320 billion valuation now. It's not much, but they decided to shut it down today because they think that either they couldn't compete, where I think Google is eating most of the market, or they generally think that there's a lot of fraud and a lot of lack of viewability in these inventory, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Or maybe they want to go build their own track of video. That's one of the failure. Sometimes you buy it because you think the industry is heading one day, but it doesn't happen. So for example, if everybody now is betting on VR, if VR is not happening, obviously in 2-3 years down the line, you will have to shut it down. But I think it's on the right track. Other example is what Apple, when they bought Lala, I think a couple of years ago actually, they just bought it to shut it down, nothing else. Because they thought they are competing with them head to head. So they're like, let's buy it and shut it down because they have enough cash. So there is a lot of these. It's not easy for a big corporation to buy these companies and merge them. And even within Google itself, like most of their companies are acquisitions, and it's still very hard for them to put them as one team. You find these silos within these companies.
Yeah, and like your perspective on what was the reason actually, like maybe, like Frédéric, more about like what kind of reason behind that, and what actually corporates and like big media companies and agencies they're doing into like to prevent these kind of things. Maybe they're running this kind of like programs. I know that you had one. Yeah, so I just wanted you to outline for people.
Yes, indeed. To build on what you just said, I have an interesting example. One of the first startups that we accelerated, called Mesagraph, was doing some semantic analysis on the web, particularly on Twitter and Facebook. And actually, at one time, they pivoted and had a great success in being a sort of they had the capability to have a qualitative analysis of the TV shows through Twitter. And they've done very good success in France, in Europe, as a whole. And at that point, it got acquired. But interestingly enough, they were not acquired by media, a TV company, for instance, but by Twitter itself. And it was the first and unique acquisition by Twitter in France at that time, 2 years ago. Which is interesting because it shows the gap there is between the technologies and the media industry at large. And that it's easier to be included in a tech company than being included in a media company, even if your technology is to be used by this media industry. So building on that, in fact, it's a general trend in Europe, and I would say it started with the US, as open innovation. At the very beginning, I think the industry tried to acquire everything they could see, with success and failure, as you said. Then there was something about the media for equity that maybe we'll talk a bit later. But today we see a strong trend in just trying to understand what are the technology actors and connect with them. So, for instance, in France, we have the AFP, that probably you know. It's a media agency providing news for all sorts of journalists. We designed with them an open innovation program. The idea was to ask the question, AFP has lots of data, videos, any kind of very interesting thing that they don't use really, or don't do any value out of it, just they provide it on a day-to-day basis, but they don't capitalize on this. So the idea was to gather an ecosystem and understand how it could be useful for their clients or clients of their clients. And so we've designed a program for 6 months, which gathers 500 different actors from all sides: technology, startups, TV, radio, journalists, corporates, like, for instance, people in the sports industry, very interesting in using the data that was provided by AFP and other actors. And during the 6 months, we've done concrete work, like providing sets of data to some startups, seeing what they could do with that, prototyping, accelerating this, and then trying to launch new products for AFP. The result of this after 6 months is good and a bit disappointing. I mean, it didn't launch a great product that changed everything for AFP. It just showed that AFP was not designed to provide its data to the rest of the world. It's like probably the API movement. I mean, the AFP should be considered as a platform and give its data as easily as possible to any people in the ecosystem, but in fact they were not designed for that. So they had to work inside their own organization and make the people work completely differently and integrate more technology so that they could provide data easily. And I think that's the latest trends for us in, I would see, at this media industry is exactly like any other corporates that is disruptive technology. They need to transform internally, and basically it's more an HR and IT issue internally than really a question of acquisition or anything with the startups. It's really being able to connect with them and so change the mindset inside.
Okay, and when we talk about the investment themselves, do you think this is the right approach to invest in them, like first in money and then provide them some equity, media for equity? Or you think we should, the agencies like Publicis and others, they should only invest or only do the media for equity?
Well, I think it's really, it depends on the maturity of the corporation, and that's a key point. Media for equity, for instance, started probably in the US, with good results with New York Times, feel like that. In Europe, and particularly Germany, it was quite successful. I think in Germany, something like 200 different startups has benefited from this, with some specific funds that were created for that. And for instance, Zalando, that probably know, the shoe seller on internet, has benefited from this lever. So it could work. But they don't tell a lot about their failure, but there are some failures. Particularly when the media industry takes from equity, but in fact, basically it's to optimize their own selling. They just give to the startups the spaces they can't sell by themselves, or that's not the good ones. So it's a bad idea. It's a good idea on the paper, and then it's transformed as a bad idea because they see it as an opportunity to resell some, to optimize their revenues. And the other thing that the media industry sometimes don't understand at all the startup they are supposed to help. They don't understand the technology or what is really its target, and so the media coverage that is given is not efficient for the startups. And that's the other main point. Technology is hard to understand and hard to integrate in the company. So if you are not trained some people inside the company to connect with the startups, mainly it's a failure.
Okay. Ali, do we have any examples of media for equity deals here in the Middle East?
I haven't heard. I have to check if the Shweir group, because they're investing a lot in startup, I don't think they got to a point where at the beginning it's media for equity. For face value, it's a good deal, but when you go with details of it, it's somehow an unfair barter, I think, at some point. If it's the next step for you, maybe it's a good deal. But if you're from the beginning, you only want to give media against equity, and especially when you count the media as your gross, not as your net, there might be some games into it. I haven't heard of it in MENA yet.
All right.
But the program I've seen a lot in the US, as you said, that we've heard a lot about it.
Do you think there is a potential for this?
Yeah, for sure. Again, depending on where you are at the startup, which stage you are. If you're at a stage where you need to grow your user base, your customer base, obviously media or marketing is the biggest thing you need to invest in. So that can work for sure.
Okay, and what kind of trends do you see in the next coming couple of years?
Let me talk from we see the trends typically is when you start seeing these acquisitions in a certain way. When Facebook started talking about cross-screen, maybe 2 years ago, we started seeing Google trying to invest as much as possible into cross-screen. What we see is the world moving to programmatic, and not only your typical digital programmatic. We see everything becoming programmatic in the near future. We saw some tests here and then on radio and outdoor. But I think in the next 4 to 5 years, you can start buying and tracking the user across all the screens. That's very important from a marketing perspective, from an acquisition perspective, because at least, especially with the Internet of Things, if you get to a point where you can tag a user everywhere he is, and I think the technology now almost allows you to do that, you get to a place where you're much more efficient. You get to a place where you don't need to talk to the consumer in 6 different languages, and you think that it's a different one while it's the same one, and you confuse them. So I think that trend is going to continue. The second one is one I talked about before is VR, and you can see that all of the experiences are becoming that. And that doesn't start because Google or Facebook with Oculus, they start investing in it. Think about what experiences you can create. We were talking to one of our airlines clients, and the discussion was, how can I change the experience within the economy of an airline? Can VR help me give experience that is bigger and make the person sitting on the seat feel that the space is bigger? Obviously, the answer is yes. Can use other technology to fix these issues in the marketplace, and definitely I think these are going to continue and growing.
Perfect. anything from you? We want to add something, Frédéric, on the trends?
Yeah.
Like global scale, maybe?
Yes, well, we have an agnostic acceleration program, but actually 10% of our startups are media related, and I think the trend is increasing. In the last batch, it was more like 20%. It's very technology oriented. It's mainly about data mining, artificial intelligence, and let's say things like virtual reality is coming also very soon in our acceleration program. So, for instance, we have something like, it's more like giving some new tools to the journalists, also to the industry, to be more productive. For instance, Diplomatic is a deep learning visual search, which enables also the e-commerce and medias to get new revenues from connection between the images and something you can buy on the web. It just recently raised $1.4 million, and it just 2 months after being outside, getting out of our acceleration program. There's also NUMA, which is a geofence data mining tool, which enables the journalist to get very quickly some information about something happening somewhere in the world. And that's a big trend, is giving some more productivity tools to the journalists, because they need to be more and more efficient if they want to survive in this world where, in fact, information comes from everywhere. So that's a trend that we see actually. There's also many things about deep learning, like automatic writing or chatbots on the webs that we see particularly in Europe. Yes. And really, I think the virtual reality will very come into the play. There are some technical difficulty. I mean, basically, the idea is that the journalist could just give a 360 degrees view of what he is covering. The problem is with editing, because when you have so many images and so in all directions, it's very difficult to edit something that is good in any way. So that's why, once again, the connection and working between the corporates, let's say the B2Bs and the startup is very important to make something that works.
Yeah. Do we have entrepreneurs in the hall who are working on media startup or like advertising startup? Anyone? Anyone wants to approach Starcom right now on the stage? All right. We have one. Okay.
Anyway, my question is, I'm trying to understand. So Starcom is going to become Starcom is now an investor in media companies, where you're taking on the role of a VC, right? Is there like a Publicis VC fund now? I'd like to understand that a bit more.
Yes. So on a global level, it's a fund. It's a competition that started as a competition, now became a big fund. So they want to get to this year. They want to get to 90 startups globally, and they want to invest a ticket from 10K to €500,000 in
So Ali, this is a major business change, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like you were always a marketing communications group, and now you're adding venture capital within the group. It's interesting. And this is because you want to diversify revenue down the line, because the marketing communication sector is changing, because this is about guarding against the future of the agency groups.
This is one angle of it for sure. We call ourselves a media agency, but honestly, I don't like that name to start with. There are now more tech people, more engineers, more developers inside the company than there is planners.
Like the gentleman before, you said there's no difference between comms and commerce.
Yes.
It was very, very nice quotation, by the way.
We even have consultancy practice in-house. Like if my clients want to go into e-commerce, we provide that service for them as consultancy A to Z. The second reason is, I think globally they're being a bit smart. When I said that they paid $3.4 billion in an acquisition, at some point, if you see that there's a good group or a good company that can acquire for 1-2 million and not spend 3.4 billion, it makes sense on the long run for you to invest in it, grow it the way it happened. And I think they're trying as much as possible to diversify from now, so that in 5-10 years they have enough scale or enough businesses so that they can build themselves and not go buy big companies.
So I can give a chance to someone else. So I just want to make sure that you're investing mainly in ad tech, not investing in commerce style ventures, people who want to do, you said something about online health and stuff like that.
So
why not only focus on ad tech? Because ad tech is your core, isn't it? It's what you do for a living every day.
Yes and no. So let me tell you, Publicis globally is 4 different companies. You have Publicis Media, which is us, which is the media company. You have the Publicis Communication, which is the advertising, the Leo Burnett of the world, and the Saatchi. You have Publicis Health, which is the biggest global healthcare consultancy practice. It sits within Publicis.
It's a marketing communications healthcare consultancy.
No, they consult even on the product itself. So they go into, it's a full consultancy just for healthcare.
IT solutions, you mean?
Sapient is the fourth one is tech, which is Sapient, which is Digitas, which is LBI, which is all the company. But the third one, yes, is a full healthcare. Like if you want to go to market with a certain product, they would consult you on the pricing, they'll consult you on how to access the market, consult you on everything beyond media or advertising. That's one of the biggest practices we have globally. It's not in MENA, that's why people don't know about it, but in the US, in France, it's one of our biggest companies.
Thank you, Ali. It's very interesting, the transformation that's happening in these big agency groups. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah, I think time's up. Guys, we're going to be around, so you can definitely talk to us somewhere in the halls. Thank you so much for the attention.
Thank you, Igor.
And see you. Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.